It's T-minus 2 days until the NFL draft. Can you believe it? It's almost here. And the Giants have the third pick. Let's talk about it next on the Big Blue Breakdown live. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Big Blue Breakdown Live. It is a very special edition featuring the NFL Draft. Yeah, why not? I mean, come on. It's going to be wall-to-wall coverage over the course of the next week. I've got a bunch of responsibilities as part of the New York Giants official broadcast team, so there's no way I could possibly do this show on Wednesday night. That's why we're here tonight. And boy, do we have a great show for you this evening. We're expecting to have former Giants linebacker and one of my broadcast partners on the Giants radio pregame and postgame show, Jonathan Casillas, to stop by in just a bit to talk to us about the Giants depth chart and the Giants needs as they go in to the NFL draft. Coming up also in just a bit, we're going to talk to Sirius NFL or XM NFL radio host Vic Carucci. He has been around this league for decades after decades after decades. He is about as plugged in terms of the scuttlebutt around the league as anybody is. I talked to him just before dinner. We got a terrific segment on tap for you. And what I did is to ask him about the Giants situation and how they configure in the entire scope of the draft. What people around the league are saying about them, what he thinks they may do based on all of those tidbits of information. And I think you're going to really enjoy it because I had a blast talking to Vic, and that's going to be coming up in just a little bit. And I think the interesting part about all of this, really, when you get down to it, the interesting part about all of this is that ultimately, no matter what anybody says, nobody knows a darn thing. Look, I work in the building. I have no idea what the Giants are going to do. They keep all that stuff under lock and key upstairs. And even if I did, I couldn't tell you. But here's what I can do. I can use my years of knowledge and experience to give you logical scenarios based on what I do know from talking to scouts around the league, from talking to former coaches around the league, from talking to football people who I have great respect for. And then I can interpret and give you a feel for what's going down. All right, so here's what I want to do. We're going to be hoping to get Jonathan Casillas on in just a couple of moments. I know he's got his dog barking away in the background, so he's going to try to get that squared away and join us in a very, very short time. Now, in the meantime, what I want to try to do is get a little bit of a flavor for what you guys are talking about. Hey, there's Christine. She's back with us again. Hello, everybody. Aiden Fink says, happy draft week. Happy draft week. Very cool. The Big Moo is in there once again. Great stuff. All right, so glad to see you guys. Now, some of our regulars, I'm sure, are probably not going to be able to make it tonight, because we usually bring this show to you every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time. But again, special show tonight, NFL draft stuff, and Captain America says, if fans had their way, it would be Hunter or Carter. Yeah, I do believe that is the case, Captain. And here is my man, former Giants linebacker and two-time Super Bowl champion, Jonathan Casillas, joining us here on the program. My friend, it's always good to see you. How you been?
I'm good, Paul. How are you, man? I miss you so much, man. I haven't seen you in so long.
I know it seems like forever. And you know, Jonathan, it's funny because, you know, all the different shows that we do during the course of the season, the pregame shows, the postgame shows, the Big Blue Kickoff live shows. You know, I always tell people that in season, the time goes quickly because we are having so much fun at what we do. We are so absorbed into what we do. We sit there in the press box next to each other. We have digestive issues as we're watching the game. And then the offseason comes, and I'm banging my head against the wall This to me is more stressful than anything else that you and I, watch in the press box.
A lot of idle time, a lot of idle time. I know you pay attention to college ball. I don't really pay attention to college ball like that. So I know this time of the year is really exciting for you, prepping for the draft, prepping and watching all of the college film. But I be paying attention. I do be listening to what people got to say about some of these top recruits coming out. But yeah, the games, no matter how they go, right? It could be a great game. The Giants is winning. The Giants are competitive, or the Giants losing. We still have a good time. And it could be a sad good time sometimes, right, Paul? But it's a good time nonetheless. And I'm ready to talk some draft, man.
Sometimes we just commiserate, folks. Sometimes it's all we have is to commiserate. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put the Giants on the clock at number 3, and we're gonna give your dog the first pick. How about that?
I like it.
Now, here's what I want to do with Jonathan, because, as you guys know, he's a 2-time Super Bowl champ, so he knows what it takes to win. He understands the makeup of a Super Bowl caliber roster. Heck, right now, the Giants are trying to get to be a playoff caliber team, never mind a Super Bowl team. So I think the first thing that I want to do, Jonathan, before we even touch on the draft, maybe I should just ask you if you have a quick thought about Russell Wilson. At 37 years old, or he's going to be 37 in midseason, we know what he did last year with Pittsburgh, won 6 of his first 7 starts. Then it faded down the stretch. The team had struggled offensively, and they got knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. You saw the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Giants in a primetime game in what was a really good tug-of-war kind of game. I wonder, just before we get to the draft, your thoughts about Russell Wilson and what he might be able to bring to the Giants, not just in terms of stats, but also his presence as a guy who's been to 2 Super Bowls and has a Lombardi trophy.
Well, that's the thing about Russell Wilson. He's always been that leadership guy, that locker room guy that, brings guys together. I think he has a little bit of a different approach, I think, compared to, I guess, the more regular leaders that we normally know of. But he's a guy that has been to 2 Super Bowls, won 1, had a lot of success. Not too long ago, he was up for the MVP candidacy based on his performance. And, last year, I think you've seen a guy who is getting a little bit older, but he's also coming off an injury last year as well. So sometimes when you come back off an injury, Paul, you never really recover, and your play shows. So I'm thinking that might have been a factor on how he kind of, diminished a little bit down the stretch, because when we played Pittsburgh was trying to almost rolling at that point. They scored 30, I think 2 or 3 times in a row, and all of their wins prior to that, they didn't score 30. But with Russell there, they scored 30 because of why? Because of his leadership, his ability to throw the deep ball down the field. Not just the willingness to throw, but the accuracy that he throws it with. And no matter what you say about his game, that has transferred over. He may not be as mobile, but he can still find ways inside the pocket to move around and then also create things outside the pocket. Is it vintage 2012, 2013 Russell Wilson? No, but you do have a tenured quarterback who has proven to win games, won a lot of playoff games. Like I said, won a Super Bowl. He's been a guy to lead many locker rooms now. And the only thing is, me, Paul, I'm just looking like, why did the last 2 teams, Denver Broncos and the Steelers, why did they move on from him? And I hope that maybe last year, maybe there was just the injury thing that happened. I don't know the answer to that question. I hope it doesn't blow up in the Giants' face, because Russell Wilson, being a former Badger like myself, got a lot of respect for him, a lot of respect for his body of work and the approach that he takes to the game. And I hope it still carries over, because if he does show up as he does in the past, I think the Giants have a solid quarterback now.
Well, the one thing that I think we can all agree on, he's very careful with the football. He doesn't turn it over very much. And he's always had that deep moon ball, right? The bomb, the explosive play capability. That doesn't seem to have left him at all. For whatever slowing down he may have, incurred, he still has the ability to drop that bomb in the bucket. And I think the one thing that you could probably tell me, Jonathan, as a defensive player during your whole career, when you see the offense make those kinds of big plays, it can energize everybody on the bench.
Absolutely. I mean, it could take a drive or a game that's, not going anywhere, or you're getting, blown out, or it's just looking lopsided. The energy's not there. All of a sudden, big play happens. It doesn't even have to be a touchdown, but that awakens not only the offensive guys, but the defensive guys, the crowd, especially when you're at home or when you're on the road, you're in a hostile environment. All of a sudden, you throw a deep ball, you shut them up. You quiet the crowd a little bit. So that big play has been kind of what the NFL has been moving to since the NFL has shifted from being such a predominant run game back in the 90s, early 2000s to now being a quarterback-driven big play. Wide receivers are getting paid almost $40 million a year. Why? Because of the big play potential. Russell Wilson always had that big play potential, and now he's coming to a team with multiple deep threats that are there. Giants re-signing Darius Slayton, the tenured veteran that's been there for what? Is it 8 years now or 7?
Isn't it incredible?
He's been there for a long time. The most
know.
consistent guy that the Giants has had on the roster through and through since he's been signed. Of course, he's the longest tenured guy on the team. I think he means so much to that locker room, man. And I like when Russell Wilson had I think it was his first interview with the Giants media, or just media in general. He dropped Jalen Hyatt's name. I perked up. Paul, I heard that. I perked up. I said, okay. Because he see the potential in a Jalen Hyatt. Let's see if Russell Wilson can come here and maximize that. And of course, we got Malik Neighbors for the Giants last year. Had a phenomenal rookie campaign situation. And now look, I'm not saying James can be. Especially this offseason. And not only did they answer it once, they answered it twice with the guy in Jameis Winston, who I would consider a gunslinger.
Yeah. Oh, I think we got a little bit of a freeze there with Jonathan's connection. Jonathan, did we lose you? All right, Jonathan, I tell you what, I don't know if you can still hear me, but try to, let's see, I'm going to have to email Jonathan, ask him if he can try to log back in, because there seems to be a problem there. I don't know what's going on, but okay. Try to log back in. All right, so you froze. All right, Jonathan, we will get back to you. In the meantime, the wonders of the technical world that we live in. Incredible. All right, let me quickly get to some of your comments, and we'll get Jonathan back up, hopefully, in just a couple of moments. Independent outsider, Dave Denton says, if the Giants draft Abdul Carter at 3, how possible is it they draft another Penn State defender in later rounds? I'm thinking specifically of safety Jalen Reed and Siobhan Revel, cornerback. Curious. Well, look, I don't think they're connected at all. If the Giants decide that they want to get some more depth in the secondary, and I could see that potentially happening later down the road in the draft, you're talking about two guys who are absolutely draftable. These guys have make it 53-man roster grades. So no, I would not be shocked if they drafted either one of those guys later, much later in the draft, regardless of what they do with Abdul Carter. At number 3, John Morano says hello, and a hi back to you, John. Hopefully we're going to get the other John, as in Jonathan Casillas, back up because of the lack of a connection issue there. I do want to tell you, again, coming up later on, folks, let me first say this. Vic Carucci, I was thinking about putting him on right away, but because obviously we were able to get Jonathan hooked up quickly, I wanted to go there first. We just got a whole bunch of programming technical difficulties going on here, but I'm going to try to keep you entertained anyway. In the meantime, if you do want to try to get a video or phone call in, you see the link at the bottom of the screen. It is there if you want to give it a try. I'm not so sure why Jonathan got frozen out and then we lost the connection there. I don't understand exactly what happened, but we did lose the connection. Oh, I think we got him back. Let's see. Let's see. Jonathan, you're back.
Am I here? Am I back? Oh
You're
man.
back. I don't know how we lost you.
I usually have premium grade internet Wi-Fi over here. You know, I'll be gaming and stuff. I'm always doing podcast spots, and I'm a little embarrassed. I think it was my connection over here, Paul. My
It's
fault.
okay. It's okay. It's okay. You know what I think it was? I think Aaron Rodgers was in his dark room and accidentally hit the wrong button, and it threw you off.
What does Aaron Rodgers have to do? Is he in New Jersey right now? No, he's in California.
I have no idea
right now, right?
where he is. Nor does the rest of the NFL have any idea where he is, either physically or mentally, for that matter.
Right. What do you think he's going to do? You think he's going to play again?
I do. I think he's going to go back to Pittsburgh. But by the way, that puts that organization in a real pickle because the draft is coming up here on Thursday. And they got to figure out if they really need to go high on a quarterback or be able to take one a little bit later on.
Yeah.
I mean, they got Mason Rudolph back, and he did get them to a playoff game at one point.
And that might factor in to the Giants, especially if the Giants want to try to maybe move back into that first round to get a quarterback. I know we're going to talk about that, but that's something that might even come up. If the Steelers don't sign Aaron Rodgers in the next 48 hours we got until the draft starts. I can't even imagine being on the other side of that. Like, you can call me back? All right. Yeah. Call me back soon. And you just don't hear anything back from this guy because he's been in communication with them. And they're probably waiting, but like, what is that conversation like with a guy who you don't know? Like he's in his own world, bro. Like he's not like anybody that we probably ever met in our lives. Seriously.
No. I think when I was a kid, there was a Saturday morning show on Channel 4 about prehistoric dinosaurs called Land of the Lost. And this family accidentally went through a black hole and wound up going through the black hole, and they wound up coming out on the other side in a prehistoric world with all these dinosaurs and stuff. Well, I wonder if Aaron Rodgers is in the land of the lost right now. I know the Steelers are certainly looking for him.
Somebody.
Right. So here's what I want to do with you, Jonathan. We got your take on Russell Wilson. I want to get your take on the Giants' position groups, okay? And give me your thoughts as we go through them as to how much you think the Giants need to put an emphasis on trying to reinforce those specific groups. Now, let's start with the quarterback for a second, right? I'm of the opinion that if they can get a guy who they're all in on, they should, of course, go get him. But if they're not all in on a guy, I don't think they should force it, and I don't think they have to draft a quarterback in this draft. If they decide that nobody is here that fits the bill that they're looking for. What do you say?
I think I agree with you. Signing both Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson, two solid veterans. The quarterback, for the New York Giants, the quarterback play for the New York Giants has not been up to par. And the Giants, that was the number one concern, not just for, I think, the Giants team, but Giants Nation. All the Giants fans out there is what are the Giants going to do at quarterback? And they addressed it twice, signing Jameis first in kind of a backup type situation with the contract structure. And then Russell Wilson basically for like a 1-year deal for Russell Wilson to see what he can do for this franchise. And I don't think you bring those guys in when you're thinking about a rebuild. I think you bring those guys in when you want to do something now. When you have guys that can play right now, that understands how to be a quarterback in the NFL. Now, all of these guys that are coming out in the draft, they're all talented, but none of these guys, let alone quarterbacks, any of these guys in the position know how to play their position in the NFL. It hasn't happened yet. And the Giants have two guys that can play the quarterback position at a high level already. So I'm with you. I don't think the Giants have to get a guy in the draft if they don't love him. Now, if you love a guy, if there's one of those guys up there, the Jackson Darts, the Shador Sanders, I don't think you reach for that guy at 3 because I think there's two generational players that will be available for the Giants. That the Giants, for me, I wouldn't care either way they go with Hunter or Abdul Carter. I don't care. I don't think you should reach for a quarterback at that third spot, but possibly if you love someone, we talked about the Steelers earlier, not, addressing the Aaron Rodgers situation. If you can slide up into the back end of that first round and grab one of those quarterbacks, from what I've been hearing from Jackson Dart, from what I've been hearing from Shedeur Sanders, they may not be worth a top 5 draft pick, but these are guys that can come in the league. Dart's potential being a little bit higher, but then you look at Sanders, he's a winner, Paul. I'm sorry. If I want to bring in a quarterback, I'm going to bring in a winner. He may not be that number 3 pick grade, but if you can figure out a way to manipulate the draft into your favor to get back in that first round and get a quarterback, I'm cool with that too. I just don't know if the Giants will do that, because if they don't love them, you shouldn't do it at all, because you already dressed the position twice, and now you can go ahead and do what's best for your team instead of saying, hey, we need a young quarterback. You need a good quarterback, and you might have 2 good ones that you got. You only need one, right? So let's see what the Giants do. I'm all for them drafting one at any time in the draft, but I truly understand if they don't. And I'm with the don't crew, because you got 2 quarterbacks already.
Well, I appreciate that perspective, because you and I share it right down the middle, right there. And I will say this, the key word for me is conviction. If you have conviction, go get the guy you believe in. If you don't have conviction, don't do it. It's just that simple. It's just that simple.
And I think that goes with any position, Paul. Like, if you have a guy on your list that's number 1 on your chart, and you're coming up, maybe it's just 3rd round, 4th round, one of those, 3rd round draft picks, and you see another team that's sitting maybe right in front of you that probably wants that guy, go ahead and move up and get him. Like, for me, I think Joe Shane has done a pretty good job, especially last year's draft, and drafting guys and scouting guys and realizing these young talented guys and how they fit into an NFL locker room. I think he's been doing a good job at that. So for me, go ahead and do it. If you have conviction over a guy that you believe in, that'll be a cog in that locker room, not just on the field, I would say go ahead and do it, man.
All right, so let's talk about the units. Let's go offense. We started with the quarterback. Skill position players on offense. There's the running backs, the tight ends, and the wide receivers. Personally, Jonathan, I'd love to see them add some depth at running back, specifically a bruiser. I'd like to see a hammer in there. You're not going to find Brandon Jacobs in every draft. It does not happen. But I would love to see them get a guy who can pound it up in there and push the pile, get the short yardage first downs, get the short yardage goal line touchdowns. Because I think Tyrone Tracy, to me, has proven he can do a lot of the other stuff, but I'm not so sure that they have a hammer. Receiver-wise, maybe add another burner perhaps. And tight end-wise, although it's a good tight end draft, I don't necessarily know that they need another tight end. What's your take?
Yeah, look, I think Tracy, he did a phenomenal job last year, Paul. I think he surprised a lot of us in how he performed last year. Singletary's still a guy for the New York Giants. He's always been, he's one of those guys that get them little tough yardage. Sometimes if, you need a 4-yard gain, 5-yard gain, he's sneaky good, man. His running style reminds me of, the running back from Miami that played at Buffalo, San Francisco. I can't think of his name. Frank Gore. He reminds me of Frank Gore, the way he runs the football, how low he is. I love the way he runs behind his pads. I think we've seen Tyrone Tracy show us his potential on his big playability. But I agree with you. I think the Giants could use a bruiser, somebody that can run between the tackles, get those tough yards. And look, I think the what Saquon Barkley did last year and Derrick Henry did last year, I think they're putting a stamp on that running back position, trying to bring that running back position back, because I don't care how good your team is, how good your quarterback is. If you can't run the football, you're just not going to win tough games. You're not going to win games late in the year. You're not going to win playoff games. You have to be able to run the ball and be able to stop the ball. So I agree with you in getting the running back. Malik Neighbors was the Giants' last year first-round draft pick. Tremendous rookie season. And the Giants do have depth right now at the wide receiver position, bringing in a couple guys, re-signing Slate, and I think Wan'Dale Robinson will have a great year this year, especially if you get that quarterback that can throw him the ball consistently. Tight ends, Daniel Bellinger, he's a guy that, 2 years ago, Paul, when we talked about him, we had a lot of high hopes in him. I think he took a little step back last year. I don't know, exactly what caused that. I do see him having some potential on getting back to being that dual threat blocking wide receiver, H-back. I guess that's a triple threat type of guy. And Chris Manhertz, he's a guy that we didn't really speak about a lot yet last year, but he was the guy to catch Daniel Jones' first home touchdown last year, which was a huge surprise to everybody that was involved. But he was a guy that went kind of under the radar, but he did a solid job whenever his number was called. He was a guy that was blocking on the edge. He was blocking at the point of attack. He was a guy that they can rely on. I don't see the Giants reaching for a tight end, but I don't see them not trying to get a tight end because of the Daniel Bellinger question. I think Theo Johnson had a tremendous rookie year. He also is coming off an injury that he accumulated last year. I think the Giants, I'm not saying they shouldn't go, but I think with those early top 100 picks, I think they got 5 of them, right, Paul? They got 5
of the first 105.
5 of top 105. With those 5 picks, I would like to see maybe not these positions, but I would like to see maybe in the later rounds, the second day, maybe adding a wide receiver with some height, weight. I know you got Bryce Ford Wheaton there, somebody that's going to contribute, maybe possession wide receiver, running back you can get. Like, I don't want to say don't draft any of these guys, but I'm not pressing any of these positions. I think the positions that are coming up are a little bit more pressing that the Giants.
I agree with
especially
you.
Earlier in the draft.
And by the way, as someone who was a special teams guru during your career, Bryce Ford Wheaton, really after coming off of his torn knee when, he had the ACL the year before, good for him to make the team last year on the 53. And he wound up becoming one of their better special teams coverage guys during the season.
Absolutely. Look, I think the emphasis I've been saying since I've joined the Giants broadcasting staff was the emphasis on having special teams players, like players that only play special teams. Yes, he's a receiver, but he probably not going to play receiver. Not that he's not good enough, is because he's so good on special teams that you literally say he's our just in case wide receiver, but he's our number one gunner. He's our number one guy down the middle. He's our number one double team guy. He's our number point and pin guy on kick return. He can check so many boxes for you in terms of special teams. And, I don't know what they're doing with the kickoff this year, Paul, but special teams is still a third of the game. It's still a valuable time of the game where a lot of what's it called?
There's a lot of hidden yardage.
A lot of hidden yardage, right? Yep. See, that was hidden from my thought process just now. A lot of hidden yardage happens in special teams where you see the total yardage output, and then you're like, oh, wow, it was a close game, but actually it wasn't because special teams accumulated so much in the special teams game. And I just think people kind of just keep it under the radar, but not the Giants. I think what they did this year, keeping Bryce Ford Wheaton last year, signing Chris Board, who did a lot of great things for the Ravens last year.
Yes.
Not just playing defense, but on special teams. He was a special teams monster, you know, so don't know, Coughlin, that was my guy for a long time for the Giants, but, he's gone, if I'm not mistaken, or they're moving on from him. But now they brought in a guy like Chris Board. I would like the Giants to not only just draft guys, to play a certain position, but why not draft a special teams ace who you look at and say, yes, he's a good safety. Yes, he's a good tight end. Yes, he's a good linebacker, but he would be great at the right wing or the right tackle position on special teams. Because I think that adds some type of presence to your team when you have core special teams guys that when you go against them, you're like, all right, who do we have to worry about on special teams? And it's not one guy, it's not two guys, it's like 4 or 5 guys because they're very efficient and very dominant on special teams. And I think the Giants are flirting with some of those guys right now.
Yeah, I think especially when you're a team that's trying to get back, to the respectable level. I mean, the Giants won 3 games last year. They need to be more competitive. One of the easiest ways to do it is just dominate on special teams.
Yeah, yeah.
No doubt. No doubt.
Which we haven't seen. We've seen a lot of blunders. We've seen some splash special team plays, Paul, but a lot of blunders and mishaps on that special teams unit.
Yeah.
And the Giants got to figure that out, because you can't be not good on offense, and defense is kind of up and down throughout the year last year, and then very inconsistent in special teams.
Right.
That's just like, at the end of the day, the ebb and flow of a game, right? They talk about how the momentum of a game goes, right? People they don't factor in special teams all the time. But when you get stopped on offense, and you kick a ball and you back a team up because you had a great punt with great coverage from the gunners, all of a sudden you got a 50-yard punt, taking possession on a 7, like that can change the momentum of a game. Now, you know how it is on that left side where the Giants are at, in that stadium. When they're down there, it gets real loud down there. You know what I mean? It gets real. It feels like you're real tight and small down there. I loved it when I played, getting the team in that side of the end zone backed up. I'm doing this to the crowd, Paul, trying to get the crowd involved. But the special teams factor, I think Joe Shane has done a great job during his tenure to grab some special teams guys and maybe not even play them that much at their natural position, but kind of molding them to really be core teamers, to take that special teams presence up another notch, because the Giants just have been struggling with that side of the ball for a while now.
All right, let me finish off the offense with the obvious unit that over the years has had the most difficulty, and that's the offensive line. Now, Jonathan, I know they've got Andrew Thomas, and I know they really like Jermaine Illuminor, and Runyon was okay last year. The injuries really started to chip away at this line. As Joe Shane said, after the first 6 weeks of the season, the line was better than average. They were actually a little higher than that. And then the injuries started to creep in, and the depth was a problem, and then things just went downhill. So here's what I would ask you. And I know Evan Neal, according to Joe Shane, has said he'll do whatever's good for the team, which includes cross-training at guard. Do you think it's necessary for the Giants to add offensive line in the draft? And if you did, would you try to add guys in the interior, or would you try to add someone else at tackle?
For me, I'm open. I'll be open, and honestly, I wouldn't have been open if it wasn't for Andrew Thomas's health. I think his health the last few years has become a big question mark. Sorry to say, for the Giants. He just hasn't been consistently playing that much. And, when he's out there, especially before the rash of injuries started, like, the guy was one of the best players in the NFL, one of the best left tackles, performing on a consistent basis. And then, the revolving door and the musical chairs they've been playing at the guard positions the last 3 years due to skill and then also injuries. I'm not opposed to neither one of them.
Okay.
The Giants need not like, you need a bell cow running back. You need a nice, talented wide receiver. I think you need a bell cow, like, interior lineman. And I'm talking about those guard positions, and I know you got John Runyon, you got Greg GVR.
Ben Roten, yep.
And GVR is probably on his way out. He's on the back 9. You need a dominant guard. You need a guy who can go in there and be an all-pro type of guy, that's next to either we got to see Illuminor, Andrew Thomas, whatever side it is, but a guy that you can rely on for the next 10 to 12 years. And I'm not opposed to the Giants trying to find that guy in the draft. And I'm not opposed to trying to find an extra tackle because of the health of Andrew Thomas, because of the question marks when Andrew Thomas goes down, where it starts just we don't know what goes on at left tackle, right tackle when Andrew Thomas goes down. It's been really hard to watch the last few years. So I'm not opposed to either one of them. I don't think, because the Giants, what I've known for the Giants, since I've known them, Paul, was the Giants always had a dominant offensive line. Why are the Giants not the Giants right now? It's 2 reasons why. Number one, They're not moving people off the line of scrimmage anymore on offense, and their defense is not dominant. Those are the two reasons why the Giants don't look like the Giants of old. How do you do that? You have to grab some great offensive linemen that have that dog, tough, like that backyard bully mentality, you know, and I don't know if the Giants have that guy for the future on the team. Now, they got a whole bunch of pretty good guys, Andrew Thomas being the cream of the crop, but who's the young guy that's going to take it to the next level for the next 5 to 7 years? John Michael Schmitz is a little undersized at center. I'm thinking about those guards and those tackle positions. Why not bring in a young guy at either one of those positions to be a bell cow offensive lineman for the Giants for the next 10 to 15 years?
All right, well, let's flip it to the other side of the trenches and talk about the defensive front. You know, there's a lot of people thinking that, well, if Abdul Carter's foot's okay, the Giants have to take him at 3 because he's going to be part of that front and that pass rush package. And with Thibodeau and with Burns, and now you throw Carter in there, some people say, well, you're not going to get enough snaps for him. I got a hunch Shane Bowen will find a way to get him on the field if they take him.
I don't think there's a such thing as having too many pass rushers, man. I just don't think so, man. I think, you know, you look at the defending Super Bowl champions, you know, how they've been good on defense the last several years is because they had multiple guys getting double-digit sacks every year, you know, especially last year, right? I don't see a problem at all drafting a guy like Abdul Carter that has the potential to be as good as Micah Parsons, if not better. You know, a guy that can play not only on the ball but off the ball. You know, I think he can do a lot of things. Kayvon Thibodeau has been solid. Brian Burns was the most consistent player besides Drew Phillips last year on defense. And why not add in another talented, you know, he might be a generational type of player. That's what I've been hearing. I've seen highlights, Paul. I haven't seen anything. But the things I've been hearing is that the guy is a generational type ability. Why not? Why not add him to that group? Because remember, how are the Giants dominant? How are the Giants winning Super Bowls? They didn't have one pass rusher, 2 pass rushers. They had 3, 4, 5 pass rushers, Paul, on those last 2 Super Bowl teams. And I know the teams from old, they had pass rushers as well. But the Tucks and the Osiamanures and the JPPs, like, they all played on the same team. They all were part of the same team. And before JPP was Michael Strahan. You know, so I don't see a problem at all adding a generational talent to go ahead and chase around the Jaden Daniels and you know, the other quarterbacks in the division.
I got a hunch that you'll also agree with me, though, that they got to get some more fortification against the run at the defensive tackle spot. Dexter Lawrence cannot play every snap, and you can't expect him to. And quite frankly, you know, Bobby Okereke this past season had a lot of traffic in his face. And that's one of the reasons why his numbers were down, because there wasn't enough of guys in front of him taking care of the business to give linebackers like yourself chances to make plays.
Yeah, look, Dexter, man, I'm not saying he played too many snaps last year, but next year, I don't think they're going to start him off with as many snaps as he played, especially coming off of a serious injury like he had last year with that elbow. You know, but he's the cream of the crop, bro. Like, how many games we just watch and I'm just like, Paul, look at Dex. Like, he's just so phenomenal. Like, he's making the D tackle position sexy. You talking about bringing sexy back? He's a guy that made that tackle position sexy. But the thing is, I don't think the Giants should play him 90% of the snaps. You need to have him, I think, a little lower, you know, so he can last the whole year because he's a dominant force. Let's say he plays 60%, 70, 75% anywhere in that window. He's going to be dominant for 100% of those snaps. So you got to have a guy that comes in that it's not a big drop-off. And that's what we've seen. We've seen that the last several years, Paul, where when he comes out the game, there's a big drop-off.
Teams run when they know Dexter's on the sideline, you know, getting that quick break. They usually run between the tackles.
Yep, and they keep him on the sideline if they can. They won't substitute. They'll keep him right on the sideline. I would do the same thing, you know. So I'm not fretting over it. But I did hear there was a great crop of D tackles this year.
Yep.
Why not get one of those guys early in the draft, second, third round? You got multiple third round draft picks. Why not throw one of those third rounds, if not 2, or those third rounds at one of those interior linemen, because you got to have at least 10, right, on your team, especially in the 3-4 defense. You got to have about eight minimum, but up to 10 of those interior defensive linemen. Am I correct about that, Paul?
Well,
But that number is
it
about right?
depends on if you even consider playing 4 down. Shane Bowen doesn't do that. But if you wanted to mix in some 4 down linemen in certain situations, in certain matchups against power teams that run the ball a lot, you better have some extra defensive tackles.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I wouldn't mind guys that fit the mold of being a 3-4 defensive end and also a 4-3 defensive end.
Right.
A guy that's more longer on the outside, a guy that's a little more stout. Because I think the Giants need to go ahead and try to figure out who's the right lot of guys that's going to get the Giants back to those dominant days of defense. For me, Paul, I don't worry myself with the offense. Now I'm on media. I'm still more focused on the defense, Paul, still to this day. Because
I get an earful from him every weekend.
You know it. Because I know what it takes to win here in New York, and it has to be built on the defense, It has to be dominant defensive stars disrupting dominant offensive players, right? How did the Giants win those 2 Super Bowls against the highly touted Patriots, the GOAT and Tom Brady? Because they never let Tom Brady look like Tom Brady in the Super Bowl.
Right.
And when you can do that, i.e. what the Eagles did to the Chiefs this past year in the Super Bowl, you can go ahead and win a lot of games, and you don't have to be efficient or prolific, better word to use, on offense. You just need to go ahead and be capable. And because I think the Giants are so much closer to being that than to being prolific on offense. I think they're so much closer to being dominant on defense because they have the guys. I think they got a stud middle linebacker, Mike and McFadden. I know we're probably going to get to them. You know what I think about Mike? I think he's improved the last couple of years.
Yeah,
I think he's become a great player. You got one of the best defensive linemen in the league in Dexter Lawrence, a great pass rusher, Brian Burns, everything type of guy. Thibodeau's the same type of way. And then you got Tyler Newman on the back end. We're going to go to linebackers. I think Bobby Okereke is the cream of the crop in the NFL. I think he's one of the better linebackers in the league. I think he's very smart, very intelligent, always finds his way to the football. He always finds a way to get the football out, Paul, whether it's punching the ball out, tackling the ball out, tipping the ball up, catching an interception. He's always one of those guys that found himself around the ball. Let's see how he responds this next year under his second year with Shane Bowen, because I think it was a little bit of a rougher transition for him, moving from the middle linebacker in Wink Martindale's defense, where things were kind of funneled to him, to being in this defense, Shane Bowen's defense, where things are not so funneled and he's not so much covered up and things aren't really being, aligned for him in most plays, which Wink Martindale's defense was. But I think he's a stud in anything that you ask him to do. I think he can do. Sometimes it might take a little bit of time, but now you have 2 full off seasons going into this year, 2 training camps, a whole full season under your belt. I think Bobby Okereke, from what we've seen from him in 2023, is going to show back up in 2025.
All right, so you kind of addressed the full front 7 there in the last few minutes. So why don't we just go to the secondary? Yeah. We know that they got Nubin. We know that they just signed Javon Holland off of the Miami Dolphins for a rather lofty free agent price. He was the cream of the crop of the free agents at the position. Paul Adebo, top flight corner from the Saints, a team that you played for a few years for sure. And then on the other side, Tay Banks, who was inconsistent last year in year 2. Maybe it was a sophomore slump. Who knows? And then Dre Phillips, of course, at the slot position. I think the Giants, with their 5 starters in the secondary, if those guys play to the backs of their football cards, that's a really nice group of 5. But you do have to worry about injuries. You do have to worry about depth. And then there's always the possibility that, maybe Banks won't have that natural progression of getting better, of improvement, because he needs to break out now in year 3. He does need to show why he was a first-round pick.
Yeah, and he's not the star anymore in the room. I think last year he maybe suffered from that as a second-year guy, a little bit of a sophomore slump, a little bit of the off the field, kind of, not being like, is he bought in? Is he – all of those questions. You know, he's not that guy. You got another guy that they brought in to say, hey, you know, you better be on your P's and Q's. For me, Paul, I played 9 years in the NFL. Whenever somebody bring somebody in that plays the same position as me, it's not that they're trying to replace me. It's that, hey, you better be on your P's and Q's because you will get replaced, because that's how the NFL is.
Right.
So for me, I'm not saying he will get replaced, but when you bring in a guy like Paulson Adebo, who I talked to some of my guys in New Orleans who covered the team a lot more closer, they said he's feast or famine. He's a guy that, you know, he will be getting those holding calls and maybe some pass interference calls, but he plays the ball very well. He attacks the ball, and he's an all over you type of defender. So those are all positive things. And, you know, if he can kind of just slow it down a little bit with being a little handsy, I think he's fine. I think Tay Banks needs to step up this year. You know, let's be real about this.
Sure.
You got guys like him and Cordell Flott, who has been around the Giants. Cordell's going in, what, 4th year now?
Yeah, injuries have really riddled his career to this point.
For me, consistency for him being on the field. You know, I think whenever he has been healthy, he's been okay. But I don't never want to say you got it covered at DB, because so many guys that play the defensive back positions, you can have anywhere from, you know, 5 to 8 guys out there at one time from the defensive back room, right? So for me, you look at what the Giants did last year, getting Drew Phillips. Like, bro, he was the most consistent defensive player last year for the Giants. And he was a young, dumb rookie. I'm sorry, they all are. He was a young, dumb rookie that didn't know anything, right? But how many times I looked at you and said, man, look at how Drew Phillips is playing today. Look
tough.
at Drew Phillips out there starting the game with a big hit. Like, you know, he's a guy, when we watched him when Detroit came up, you know, we know what Detroit did the last 2 years in the playoffs. We know what they mean to the NFL. They've kind of figured out their culture with their head coach. And they came into Giants facility to practice against the Giants for a couple of days. And we saw some fights happening. Right? Every day was a fight, right?
And the Giants, and I think everybody who was at those dual scrimmages with the Lions felt that the Giants more than held their own against them. It really gave us a lot of optimism.
Absolutely. But then when I saw, that was my first Drew Phillips experience. I watched him fight Amon-Ra St. Brown 3 separate times. Like, I watched him pick a fight with you know, one of the most physically tough mentally guys in the league. You know, but I watched him do it as a nobody. Let's be real. When you're a rookie and you're not a first-round draft pick, you're a nobody. You don't have a name yet. Nobody knows what you can do, and you can't play. Nobody knows that. Drew Phillips started showing that right when Detroit came. He said, I'm not going to be pushed around. I don't care if I'm a rookie. And that carried right over to the season. I'm not saying the Giants are covered at the defensive back position, because what if you can find another Drew Phillips in this 2025 draft? Let me tell you, I'll take a whole bunch of Drew Phillips in this draft because the way that kid plays, his mentality, not a big guy, but man, he has that mentality. Like, he has that dog mentality. And you saw it throughout the year. He wasn't like the most consistent because he was a rookie, but he played with heart. He played with that dog mentality that I think other people can buy into. And if there's a guy out there that the Giants see in the draft, like a Drew Phillips, oh man, bring him on. I don't care if it's 2nd round, 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round. I don't care what it is. Get one of those guys in the building.
All right. So the one guy who I have not asked you about, and I think it's important that we do this, and I've taken so much of your time, Jonathan. I apologize for holding you longer. We had the glitch with the internet before. So
but you know, we like talking, and it's been a while too. So
it has been. I need to ask you about Travis Hunter. I don't know, besides maybe a game or two here or there you may have seen, you may have just seen some highlights, but conceptually, one of the things that Joe Shane said recently at his press conference was that, you know, don't doubt this guy because his ability, his work ethic, off the charts, right? But the two things you would have to monitor with him is, one, how would he break up his meeting time if he was to play offense and defense, because there's a lot to learn in the playbook. So you'd have to monitor that very carefully, how you broke that up. And then the other thing is, at about 185 to 190 pounds, you know, durability, the number of plays that he played in college, as he starts accumulating a lot of plays in the NFL, especially if he does play some on both sides of the ball, you want to make sure he can last 17 games. And then there's a postseason after that if you make it.
Yeah. That is something that you got to worry about for sure, the durability. But, for me, I was a guy that was hurt a lot in my career. It is what it is. You can't predict any of those things. Just because he's 195 pounds, that doesn't mean he's going to get hurt. If he was 205 pounds, that doesn't mean he's not going to get hurt. So, for me, he plays two positions at the highest level that you can play him at, Paul. Like, the guy is probably the number one wide receiver in the draft and probably the number one cornerback in the draft. We haven't seen anybody like this. The Giants, do they get him at that position at number 3 if he's available? If the Browns take Abdul Carter, I think that'll be the situation where we were like, hey, do the Giants get Travis Hunter now? My thing is, do you pass him up, Paul? Do you pass that guy up and let him go somewhere else? And he's a phenomenal all-pro 10 years in a row, like, type of player. I think he's one of those guys that has that potential. And ask me what position. I don't even know, because he can do at both positions. He's that good. The ball skills he possesses on offense translates over to his skills as a defensive back.
Yeah.
The way he reacts to plays, the way he reacts to quarterbacks' arm motions, the way he sticks his nose in there on running backs. I've watched Colorado play several games this year, so I actually watched him play. Phenomenal talent. And I think if he's available and Abdul Carter's not, I don't think it's a question that the Giants get him. But I'm with you. How could he play over 100 snaps a game in the NFL? Because that's what he's saying. He's saying that's what he want to do.
I know.
I don't know how it happens. But if he does, let's say the Giants do get him and they draft him at cornerback. I think he does go through cornerback meetings most of the time. I think he runs with the defensive backs. I think he lifts with the defensive backs. And I think certain days he does wide receiver things, maybe on third down. But then also, I think they meet with him extra, because there's just not enough time in a day for you to do both during the normal hours of work. I just don't think there's enough time. You know how it is. The playbooks are very extensive. Technique being taught is very extensive. Film breakdown is very extensive, in the NFL. These are hours and hours and hours every single day that you got to put in. But from me, what it seems, from what it looks like from him, it looked like he's willing to do anything and everything he can to be the best player he can. And for me, I'd never want to turn a guy down like that possesses that type of ability, because there's no one like him in the draft. There's no one like him that we've seen in a long time coming out in the draft, Paul.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like to me, Jonathan, and I'm going to ask you, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds as if the Giants get Hunter or they get Carter, it's a win-win.
I'm cool with either one. And look, I'm not even mad if, like, people saying they don't want to get Shador, right? Because Shador is the guy that the Giants been visiting, right? Going to the games, going, pro days and the private workouts and all of that good stuff. I wouldn't be mad if they reached and got him at 3. And the reason why I say that, because if he's a guy that can be this quarterback for the New York Football Giants for 12 to 15 years, get to a Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl, it'd have been one of the greatest picks ever. Like, that's just and those are whole huge ifs, but there's ifs on everyone. And he's actually a guy that showed that he can win. Yes, he didn't do it in the NFL yet, but he did it on every level that he was ever on. High school, Division I AA, Colorado. He won on every level with poor pass protection, with high completion percentage. Those things, for me, means he's a winner. So for me, I wouldn't be mad at either one of those 3 picks. Would it be a reach? I think yes. In 10 years from now, that's when you're going to really figure out if it's a reach or not. Because you can't, first year, second year, it's hard to kind of, get, was he worth this pick? Was he worth that value? It's hard to do that. After 10 years, we're going to see if the Giants drafted Shador, Hunter, Carter in that position. You got to evaluate after 10 years, not after the first year, probably not after the second year, but after the body of work that they're put in. And when I look at it like that, Shador makes a lot of sense for me, because he looks like a guy that can do it in New York for a long time. So Shador, Hunter, Carter, for me, any 3 of those guys, and I think at least one of those guys are going to be available for the Giants, if not 2 or 3 of those guys are available for the Giants at number 3.
Yeah, as long as they keep the third pick. That's for sure.
Hey, I wouldn't mind that either, though, Paul. I just don't know if you're gonna pass up one of those generational guys.
I couldn't. I could not.
That's what
I
I'm
don't. I
saying.
could not trade out unless somebody gave me an absolutely insane offer and just loaded me up with a shopping cart full of draft choices. You remember when Mike Ditka traded his entire draft
Oh
to go
man,
get Ricky Williams?
Ricky Williams, man. Yep, gave it the whole
Hey,
draft.
if somebody wants to do that, I think I would take him up on it.
Listen, I wouldn't mind getting an extra first round this year, second round. You ever seen the movie Draft Day, where he sent out all his first round draft picks, sent out all his second round draft picks,
both
got all his first round draft picks back?
We're not realistic, Jonathan. It's a great movie. It's fun, but no one is making those trades with him in the last 20 minutes of that movie.
No, but a trade is possible for anybody at any position. The likeliness of it happening is very low, but I wouldn't be mad if the Giants did that either. Because for my thing is, you talked about, do they have conviction for a player? If they don't have one for a guy at number 3, maybe that guy's gone. Maybe the Browns got that guy that they had conviction for at the number 3 pick, where that need met that value for number 3. I don't mind you moving back into the teens and getting a guy that you have high on your board in that middle round, and then accumulating another second, maybe another first round pick. I would love that situation. But I also don't want to see Abdul Carter go to the Browns and have 15 sacks his first year. Even though that'd be all out of our hands because they picked before us. But you understand what I'm saying? It's very hard to, like, given Carter and Hunter, it's not 100% that they're going to be great in the league. It's not 100% that they're going to be playing in the league after 4 years. I'm just saying, like, you just never know. So for me, I'll be happy with any one of those guys. I think you have generational players, and you have a guy who I think is very underrated coming into this draft in Shedeur Sanders, who I think is going to surprise a lot of people depending on where he lands. People saying he's going to drop Paul. I don't know, but if the Giants can get one of those top tier players, figure out a way to get Shedeur, I'm good with that. I'm straight with that.
Jonathan, this has been so much fun, man. I'm so glad you could make this tonight. I appreciate your time. Now, tell the folks, I know you have your foundation, you got your food truck, you got your pod shows, you got a lot of stuff going on, even though the season's not here. So come on, let people know how they can see what's going on in Jonathan Casillas' life.
Well, I got to get more active on X. My X handle is jcasillas52. My Instagram, which I need to be more active on, but I'm most active on, is Jade_52. Paul, I'm legit finally about to have my foundation. I've been doing my camp this would be the 10th year.
I know.
But now it's finally going to be the Jonathan Casillas Forward Progress Foundation.
Oh, okay.
Now I can go ahead and do it. I was spoiled, Paul, because I partnered with the Board of Education in New Brunswick.
Right.
So I really didn't need that profit entity. But now I'm like, let me go ahead and do my own thing. Still have a great relationship with them, with the Giants, with the NFL, of course. All of those things are still there. But now I have my own foundation that I'm be able to do a lot more things in New Jersey and the surrounding areas for, from here on out, man.
Folks, if you don't know, Jonathan Casillas is Jersey true and true. And he is such a great dude in the community. He does so much during the course of the year on his own and on behalf of the Giants. And I will tell you, if you haven't figured it out by listening to him on the radio, or for that matter, during this program, if you ever see him out and about, always say hello, because he's just a great dude.
For real. Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
Jonathan, I appreciate you. You know that. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me, brother.
Be well, my friend. I'll see you soon.
All right. Peace.
Jonathan Casillas, former New York Giants linebacker and 2-time Super Bowl champion, joining us tonight on the Big Blue Breakdown Live. And, I can only say this. I sit next to him in the press box, during home games. He doesn't travel on the road with us. We do the pre and post game shows together. And then at home games, we sit there. And during the course of the game, we're just chopping it up nonstop, about what we see on the field. And This guy, man, he's played for a number of teams over his NFL career, but he's a Jersey guy and he bleeds blue. And I appreciate his passion and I appreciate, his heart for the game and what he sees on the field. And it's just it's been great having him as part of the Giants broadcast team. All right, what I want to do is I want to go through some of your chats along the side here and see if I can get some of those out of the way and catch up on some of you guys who were chatting with us. And then what we're going to try to do in a very short while, because I do want to catch up to your stuff first, I want to bring in Vic Carucci from Sirius NFL Radio, and he has so much to say about the NFL's perception of the Giants and how the Giants fit into the draft puzzle. I know you're going to want to listen to him. So just bear with me a second as I just get through some of your tweets, or should I say some of your chats. Christine says trenches. Yeah, absolutely. She says to Jonathan Casillas, we need a good tackle as well. He was talking about the offensive line getting involved. And she says, thank you so much for coming on the program. James O'Keefe says, hey, JC, you're the man. I will pass that along to him when I talk to him again tomorrow. Christine says, Burns is the man. He played hurt all season. He absolutely did. Brian Burns' second half of the year was badly beaten up, and he just did not want to come out of the lineup. You'll remember some of the games at the end of the year. He was at home games. He had to get helped off the field. And then the next series, there he is back out on the field again. Brian Burns is a pro's pro. I have tremendous respect for him. He was an alternate for the Pro Bowl. And I do think he was an almost all-pro player this past season. Christine wants to mention the sneakers collection for Jonathan Casillas. And yes, they were over his right shoulder. If you looked in the background of his wall there, yeah, he's got quite a few. I know, I've seen them. Tremaine Young says, do we know what numbers are for the new assets? Yeah, actually, Tremaine, if you go to the X account of the New York Giants, and I retweeted it earlier tonight, they did put out a full graphic of all the new numbers of the new players who just came in. No sense in going over that here. It is on X. You can go to my account. You go to the Giants account. It's all there. Christine chimes in again, says exactly defensive. And by the way, Christine, hope you're well. I know, I believe it was last week you weren't able to join us, or the week before. I forget, but I just hope you're doing well. James O'Keefe says, tells Christine Burns is as tough as nails, and I can absolutely second that. Gary says, hi, P-Dot, can you provide some insights on the Giants listening to trade offer rumors? Yeah, Gary, I can. Joe Schoen himself admitted in a media press conference just last week that there have been phone calls up and down. He's absolutely had those phone calls. And here's what I will tell you, Gary. All right, if you're the Giants, I don't think that short of a total ripoff and King's ransom, the Titans are going to move out of number one. I don't think that's going to happen. I also don't think that Cleveland's going to move out of number two. So I think that's more due diligence. You check on it. You see what the price is. You see what those teams are thinking about. But I don't think it's anything more than that. That's just my opinion based on what people around the league have told me. So I do think the Giants are at 3, and you can't pass up, as Joe Schoen himself also said, you can't pass up a blue chip or potential superstar type player. If you get them up there at the top of the draft and you're sitting there in that block of real estate, you've got to take them. And I think Joe Schoen is right. And that's why I think the Giants will stay at 3. And, if it were me, I don't think there's any doubt. Now that we seem to have gotten word around the league that Abdul Carter's stress reaction in his foot is rapidly healing, and that it should not be an impediment for him this season or to be drafted, according to Joe Schoen. Well, it seems to me, Hunter or Carter, whoever the Browns don't take, if it's my decision, I think that's easy. You run the card up and you're done with it, just like that. But in terms of trade offers, Gary, here's what I can tell you. If the Giants are going to try to move up from their second round pick, which is number 34 and the second selection of the second round. There are 3 teams in the lower half of the first round who have a minimal amount of picks in what is expected to be a very fruitful draft. Not necessarily of all-star players, but of players who will be either starters, rotational players, or really good backups. There are a lot of, as I call them, make it 53 players in this draft. It may wind up being one of the highest percentage of make it 53 players that we have seen in a very, very long time. So here's what I would say. There are 3 teams in the bottom 17 spots, starting with Atlanta at 15, that have 5 or fewer picks in this draft. Remember, it's 7 rounds, right? So standard is you have 7 picks, unless you did something in trade. So Atlanta at 15 has 5 picks, and there is a gaping hole between picks 46 and 118. So it would seem to me, if Atlanta could somehow try to work out a deal to get more picks, they probably are in the market to do so. The other 2 teams who I think would certainly be in that category, Minnesota at number 24 has only 4 picks in this draft. That's the fewest of anybody. They have a gaping hole between 24 and 97. And that's a huge hole. 73 picks between 24 and 97. You have to believe the Minnesota Vikings are going to want to get at least 1, if not 2 picks in that gaping hole. So I could see them moving out of spot number 24. If you're looking for another trading partner down there, well, it is a team from the NFC East. The Washington Commanders are at 29. They've got 5 picks in this draft and a cavernous hole between picks 61 and 128. That is a 67 pick spread. Man, that's an awful lot to just sit by twiddling your thumbs and watching all these great players coming off the board. So I'm pretty sure the Commanders are going to try to work something out and see if they can wind up grabbing a couple extra picks as well. Those 3 teams, I absolutely believe, are in the market to make some kind of move. Now, whether or not you want the Giants to move into the 15th slot, the 24th slot, or the 29th slot, I don't know what Joe Shane's appetite is to do such a thing. Many people have speculated the Giants could move back into the bottom third of the first round and potentially grab a quarterback there. Well, Minnesota at 24 and Washington at 29 would potentially be those kinds of teams that might be looking to make a deal. Now, I believe it was Danielle Jeremiah of NFL Network who had said, if you wanted to do something like that, if you were the Giants, you would probably have to swap out your second rounder at number 34, a third rounder, which is number, I believe, 65 or 66, and then pick number in the 5th round, which is number 154. So it would cost you your second, your third, and your 5th if you wanted to move up into that bottom third of the first round. Now, I could see it. I could see the logic if the Giants truly were all in and committed to a quarterback. If they were like, we've absolutely got to get Jackson Dart, and he's not getting to us at the top of the second round at number 34. He's not going to make it. He's just not going to make it. I could see them in theory making that deal. Giving up a 3 and a 5 to get a guy that you have conviction in, I could see that trade. I could absolutely understand the logic in doing so. But if you don't have conviction in that guy, well, then I don't think you make the trade. It's just that simple. I don't think you do. I think you stand pat at number 34 and probably get yourself either a really terrific stud defensive tackle or a really terrific stud offensive lineman. I think you go to the trenches at the top of the second round. That's what I would do. Again, I tell you on the show all the time, I don't predict what the Giants are going to do. It's not my place to tell Joe Shane what to do. That's disrespectful. I won't do it. I will tell you what I would do if I were in a similar situation as the Giants are. I think that's a perfect spot to get a stud defensive tackle or a stud offensive lineman. And I say that no matter who it is, Hunter or Carter at number 3, I still feel as I feel at the top of the second round, regardless. Captain America says a good problem to have. Christine says, Paul, who's your best running back in the draft? I'm with you on a big guy, old-timer myself. Well, Genty is the assumed number 1 all-around running back in this draft, and I would not dispute that. I would not. I understand most people, a great majority of people, believe that he's number 1. Let's see what I wrote down on him. Balance, vision, patience, things you'd want to check him on. Ball security, a little bit of an issue. Pass pro at Boise State, he wasn't doing much of that, so he'd have to learn it. And he's not a true burner, in terms of deep blazing speed. There are those people who want to dissent from Genty and tell you that Amarion Hampton out of North Carolina would be the best back in this draft. And I can understand why. They're certainly different flavors of ice cream. Hampton with a terrific burst. He's got agility. He's got a frame that's 6 feet, 220, right? Again, pass pro, not something he's been really asked or taught to do very much of. Doesn't run maybe quite as angry as his frame might indicate. And, he's more of just, he's show you what he's got and he's running. It's not about juking and faking people out and making a lot of people miss. He's going to take the ball. He's going to run it where it's supposed to go. And he's going to gain yardage because he's just one heck of a great player. Those are the two guys, if it's not Genty, Hampton is the other guy that people talk about. I did cut up reviews. And again, I'll show you guys this. This is my two stacks of papers of all my notes. I did video cut-up reviews on about 170 players for this draft. It was a lot of cramming over the course of the last 2 months or so. So I don't pretend to be a scout. I've told you that before. I will not insult anyone in the personnel department or the scouting department by telling you I have a board and I have guys ranked 1 to 100. I will not do that. That's disrespectful and insulting to people who do this for a living. But what I will do is look at the video that I get, and based on knowledge and experience, I do get a flavor, I think, about what the player is, and that's how I proceed. I think it's the only rational and respectful thing to do, since I am not a full-time scout or personnel guy, and therefore I'm not going to pretend to be one like many other people do in our business. Although there are obviously draft experts who do spend 12 months out of the year. In fact, not that I'm looking to push it, but the Beast, Dane Brugler's Athletic, from The Athletic, his book is, what is it, over 800 pages, I believe? No, it's only 520 pages. I have his book. I absolutely have his book. It's an encyclopedia. It's so comprehensive. It's incredible. I will not, just like I won't insult the scouts or the personnel department, I will not insult Dane Brugler. He spends 25 hours a day, year round, putting that book together. I'm not going to pretend that I have a draft board and I have rankings like this guy does. That's just no, that's just dumb. The man does this for a living. That's what he's paid to do. I'm paid to talk about the current team, the current players, the formations, the strategies, the injuries, and to help you guys hopefully understand more about the game. That's what my job is. That's how I earn a living. Captain America says, let's hope the Browns take Sanders. Dan Mornay says, good evening, Paul. Great JC segment. Yeah, I was really glad to get Jonathan Casillas on the program tonight. Thank you, Christine. Appreciate it. That's awesome. James O'Keefe, Scatterboo would look oh so good in blue. I mentioned somebody, and I don't know if I mentioned him last week on the show, but I mentioned him on Big Blue Kickoff Live earlier this week. Kalel Mullings, known as the Mulldozer from the University of Michigan. Oh, my goodness. I am a huge fan, and he is one of my sleeper picks of the entire draft. I don't see anybody else talking about him. I know he was only a one-year starter this past year with the Wolverines, but you want to talk about a power back who drops the hammer on people and just forcibly works his way downfield? They call him the Mulldozer for a reason. He's an ex-linebacker, 6'2", 233 pounds. My notes on him, hot motor, large, strong, sturdy frame, and he runs angry. Yeah, he's a bit raw because he only started this past season. He doesn't have great long speed. He's not going to break 155 yards for a touchdown. And he's not cute. He's not going to dance and juke people. Okay? He's going to make defenders black and blue as he powers forward and forces his way downfield. That's a guy who not a lot of NFL teams are going to be too anxious to take. They want guys who have speed. They want guys who have jukes. They want guys who have hands. They want guys who can make the big play and break it 50 yards downfield. I understand that. I think the Giants look at Tyrone Tracy as a guy who has a ton of those traits. For me, I would add a hammer to the running back room. It sounded like Jonathan Casillas was somewhat on that same page as well. And so if you're going to do it, well, who are the hammers, right? Who are the hammers? Well, there's Hampton, there's Scatterboo, and James O'Keefe mentions Scatterboo. I don't know where you've got to take. Well, Hampton's going to be probably a first-round pick. That's going to, him and Genty are going to be first-rounders. Scatterboo, some people think late third, maybe early fourth. Love him. Love him. Somebody put up a tweet on X. Is that how we phrase it now? It's not Twitter anymore, right? It's X. So I guess if somebody tweets on X, right? They don't X on X. They tweet on X. Okay. So somebody put up a tweet on X, I guess it was this morning, that Scatterboo reminds them of Rob Carpenter. Well, yes, in terms of style, yeah. Carpenter was a physical, blood and guts, blue collar, give you everything he's got, bowling ball, and overachiever. Scatterboo, I see him being stronger and a little more, to his frame than what Carpenter had. Carpenter was a tweener between a halfback and a fullback. He was a bit of a tweener, and he ran hard. Very, very hard, with great grit and determination. And without him, the Giants don't make the 1981 playoffs, without question. Loved Rob Carpenter, number 26. But Scatterboo, what I wrote down for him, power, balance, finishes his runs off with ferocity. Not the most athletic, okay. Doesn't have great long speed, okay. Did have a few ball security issues. I believe I wrote down here 10 fumbles over his career. So that's something you want to kind of check on. But other big backs, Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. I don't think he runs as hard, maybe as his frame would indicate, but he's certainly a big back. I also wrote down Quinshon Judkins, of course, out of Ohio State. There's no question about his power and the kind of hammer he brings to the table. Ollie Gordon, I'm a big fan of Ollie Gordon out of Oklahoma State. What did I write for him? First thing, he runs angry. He's got balance. He's got patience. What doesn't he have? Long speed. He does run a little high. He's 6'1", and not the greatest agility. You see, if you want a hammer, you're going to probably give up the long 50-plus yard speed that can score from, halfway down the field. Okay, if you want the hammer, you're probably going to have to give that up. And you're going to have to give up the great moves and the quicks and the jukes, I like to call them. If you want a hammer, you go for a hammer, right? You don't get a wrench. You don't get a screwdriver. You don't get an awl. If you want a hammer, draft a hammer. And that's me. I'm all about getting a hammer, which means you're going to leave a lot of very, very exciting and multi-talented running backs on the board. And I understand that. When I talk about going to get a hammer, and I give you some of these names, okay, and again, my sleeper hammer is Mullings. When you talk about these hammers, you're talking about guys who I think most teams are going to undervalue because they want all of the ESPN SportsCenter highlight guys. Hammers are not necessarily highlight guys. They move the chains. They help you in the 4-minute offense. They help you score touchdowns when you're inside the 5-yard line. That's what they do. I'm of the opinion of go get a hammer to complement Tyrone Tracy. You see? Because I think Tracy has a lot of those other elements that people watch for in the highlight films. That's why I would want to go get a hammer. Okay. Christine says, I've heard others speak of him. I guess she's talking about Scatterboo. James O'Keefe says, the Bulldozer sounds like a Parcells guy. Throwback. Oh, yeah. And, I'm sure the Bulldozer, you don't have to 5th round, maybe 6th round. He's just going to be sitting there on the board, sticking out like a sore thumb. If you want a hammer, he's going to be right there on the hardware store shelf for you. James says, love that comp. Carpenter was one of my favorite players. And says, yeah, Brandon Jacobs, a hammer. Yeah, indeed. No question about that. Folks, again, I don't know if any of you want to do a video call or an audio call. I will once again, to join the program, we'll pop this up over here. And there you go. Oh, there you go. To join the program, there's our link. And we will allow you to come in and participate. We've been here almost an hour and a half. I do have a dynamite interview that I'm about to play with Vic Carucci, unless somebody else wants to chime in here real quick, because once I get to Vic, it's going to take some time. I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Vic Carucci's interview gives great perspective, and he's totally looking from the outside of the forest. He has no influence coming from the New York metropolitan area, the Giants fans, the Giants media. What Vic is going to tell you guys about is strictly outside the box, right? Not in the New York market, but outside the New York market, giving you a completely broad brush perspective as to where the Giants stand in the draft and in the scope of the NFL picture. Well, I'll tell you what, since we don't have anybody hopping on an audio or video call, why don't we take a glance and find out about what people around the NFL think about the Giants and how they fit. So Vic Carucci's been hosting shows on SiriusXM NFL radio for more than 20 years. He's also part of the Buffalo Bills broadcast team on WGRZ television. They do pregame, postgames, and analysis shows. He has deep contacts throughout the league and has had them for decades. He's a Hall of Fame voter. He's one of the most respected NFL reporters in the country. So I started out talking to Vic just before dinner time, and I asked him if there was any way he could see the Giants get surprised at number 3. Now, by that, I mean, could either Tennessee pass on quarterback Cam Ward, or could Cleveland allow wide receiver cornerback Travis Hunter to fall and get past them?
Right. I never say never to things that could happen that don't fit the script, so to speak. But it feels like this is a draft where I think things will stay to chalk. The Titans desperately need a quarterback. They need this position to be addressed and addressed well. And by all accounts, in their evaluations and evaluations of others, this is what they have to do to that they have to make Cam Ward the guy. And my understanding, I've tried to dig into why this particular player, and there is a sense of NFL readiness with him that exceeds others. It doesn't mean he's the greatest quarterback to come along in however many years. I still think that this is not the best quarterback class, but guess what? You don't get to, as a team, say, yeah, we'll just wait for the really good quarterback class to come along. We'll skip this one. It doesn't work that way. You know that, and I know that, and people who follow the NFL know that. There is a time limit on how long decision makers get to be decision makers, and I think that's the critical nature here with the Titans, is they've got to make this move, and I think the board, and once that happens, the board sort of falls accordingly. And yes, it's hard to imagine Travis Hunter not being Cleveland's pick at number 2. For all the obvious reasons of his great talent. So, the Giants sitting there at 3, I still think they're in an excellent position to get one of the best players in the draft. And I think having those, even with those 2 guys off the board, you're not sitting there saying, man, we got to settle for something. Obviously, there's still some great talent left there.
Now, we all know this is the time of lies and deceptions. I remember many years ago when I started in this business, somebody said to me, a GM would lie right to his mother's face if he had to going into the draft. So how possible is it that Cleveland might pull a fast one? Remember when they went for Baker Mayfield all of a sudden at the last minute? Nobody expected that. It came out of left field. Could that happen and all of a sudden they take a Shedeur Sanders or maybe even a Carter?
Well, again, I wouldn't rule it out, but it doesn't feel plausible to me. It feels more plausible that they go, as I said, chalk. And yeah. I think they'd have a hard time justifying not taking Travis Hunter there. I just think the level of talent that he brings to the table is too considerable, and it's not just the multi-purpose element of his game. It is how good he is as a player, as an athlete, as a smart, instinctive. I mean, he checks so many boxes. Now, yes, they have a hit. Things have gone in different ways. Go back to Johnny Football, right? Johnny Manziel. This is when. And look, I have a history with the Browns. I worked for that organization. I worked for Jimmy Haslam. Coaches and front office people have changed since I've been there, but the owner is still the owner. And I know he was integral to the moves that they made when it came to pursuing quarterbacks. And I know he did the mea culpa at the NFL meetings a few weeks back in Florida, where he said, acknowledging what everybody knew, the terrible mistake of the Deshaun Watson, not just signing, but what they did with him with guaranteed money. And I just, if that, maybe I'm putting too much into that to say his thinking might very well be just trust the football people who evaluate and say, this is what we should do here. Now, this does not mean Shedeur Sanders, because you're asking specifically that, wouldn't be the guy that the football people would want, there. But my sense is he's not the guy that you naturally plug into that second pick or, frankly, even the third pick. But, I know that could be, that's another discussion about what the Giants might do, of course. But, could he be off the board by the time the Giants pick? Absolutely. But you're asking me how I see this going, and I guess I'm going along conventional trend here, which is Ward goes first, Hunter goes second.
Which leaves the Abdul Carter question for the Giants. And he came up with a stress reaction in his foot at the combine. Some people told me, Vic, that that is a pretty nasty situation, and some medical people around the league would yellow flag him for that, and he would have the potential to drop some. Yet, in the medical rechecks recently in Indianapolis, the word from his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, and what else is he going to say, that the foot is improved and doing better and should not be a problem. To add to this equation, Giants GM Joe Schoen said last week he did not believe that the foot issue with Carter was going to be a barrier to getting him picked at the number 3 spot. What's the scuttlebutt around the league from what you've heard? How serious is this Carter question about his foot?
Well, again, I don't want to make light of someone else's injury and say it's nothing, because, it's always, I quote Marv Levy on this all the time. It's always minor when it's somebody else's injury or surgery or whatever. Yeah. If it's yours, different story. But you have to, I say you have to, I'm inclined to think that what they call Indy 2, right? That's that medical recheck in Indianapolis, right, post-combine, has to mean something. And teams put stock in that. And I've gotten this isn't my, independent opinion about it. I'm basing it on what the Bill Polians and other high-level, Hall of Fame level, or, great GMs, people who've had a lot of success in this league picking players, how much value they place in that. And Bill in particular, I mentioned him, Polian, because he has a really good understanding, great understanding of how, how it's handled in Indianapolis when it comes to the facilities, the use of or the availability of the hospitals and the different places that are incorporated into the first go around in Indianapolis, and then the Indy 2, those follow-up checks where, and again, teams now have, I know players bring those x-rays or whatever, those come along with them to Indianapolis. So it's not just, we're not doing guesswork here, and teams do get a chance to take a very close, critical eye on progress of injury, whatever. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna go along with that, go along with his agent Drew Rosenhaus, and say that there is no reason to think otherwise. And frankly, what I think the worst scenario could be, now let me rephrase that. I think the thing that could maybe change this up, and I don't know anybody really who strongly feels this way, but if you use the names, Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, and Abdul Carter as your 1, 2, 3, maybe it's Abdul Carter who goes 2. Maybe it's the Browns who say, if we're going to get a player that can marry up with Myles Garrett and turn this into a real vicious pass rush, do follow that Philadelphia Eagles template, right? And say, okay, you saw what they did to this dangerous offense and quarterback and, iconic guy, and made him look feeble and ordinary. Largely, that game was all about, we know, that D-line.
Sure.
And it's we all know that that's an important thing to have. But can you imagine if you could build something like that? And why wouldn't they think about that? But I say that also thinking that they've got Garrett. They've got a difference maker on that side. They need probably more of a difference maker on the offensive side. And I think Hunter gives them that.
All right, so then what happens if it's the Giants who throw the change up? Because, in recent weeks, so many people think that they are going to take Abdul Carter. But how likely could it be that the Giants trade out of number 3 and move down?
I think it's a consideration, but I'd be more inclined, just given the need there to make something good happen now, that there is no time. And this I think now opens up the conversation about a rookie quarterback, if that's what you would do at 3. I don't know that that's something that can really fit the calendar for Joe Schoen, for Brian Daboll. I think their shot to get it right is here and now, and the progress needs to show. Taking Hunter at 3, if he's the guy, or Carter, those are 2 players that you could envision being impactful and making a difference for a team that's got to make progress there. I could also say that the fact that you've got 2 veterans at the quarterback position, the Giants, you'd be more inclined, I think, to find the other ways that you're enhancing your team. Bringing in a rookie quarterback, whether he's Cam Ward, whether he's Shedeur Sanders, whether, go down the list of Jackson Dart. I mean, I'm just throwing names up, so to speak. You're still dealing with some development. I don't think these are out of the box, ready to play guys that are going to make an impact. They're going to play. They're going to be out of the box and playing, because that's how we know that's how it works in the NFL, especially with a top 3 pick. But it makes more sense to me if you've covered yourself with veterans at the position of quarterback, as the Giants did. I think you're more inclined to go elsewhere.
One of the other theories which builds off of that, Vic, is that maybe the Giants take the best player available at 3 and then try to move up into the end of the first round, get the 5th-year option, get the developmental future franchise quarterback, knowing that you'll have that extra year on his contract and you'll have time to groom him and have time to wait. From your talks around the league, how likely do you think that is? How likely do you think that it'll be 2, 3, 4 quarterbacks that may go in the first round and they'll have the chance to actually make a move like that? Because I do think there may be a few other teams in this league that might have the same thought, and you might even wind up with a bidding war in the last third of the first round as somebody tries to trade up and get one of these guys.
Well, and that is interesting for this draft in particular. I mean, all drafts, how many true first round grades do you get do you get every year? And I've heard it ranging from, you can have as few as 10, and you rarely get much more than, say, 15. And this is just general discussion of,
sure.
I'm not giving you a scientific analytical look at it, but that's generally what I've heard from, again, people in the know and people who've done this job very well. That said, everybody's board, boards aren't necessarily exact. I know people who mock draft would like to think everything kind of follows a certain uniform way, and sometimes
Vic, there's a reason they're called mocks. Just remember that.
Exactly. But I would say, Paul, that a lot of it is when you're at it for this year. I use this. Somebody used this term, and it's not my original. This is a draft that has a lot of, especially in the first round, a lot of starters, but not many stars. So if that encapsulates what this draft is, then you would think you get toward the bottom of the first round, to your point, and maybe some wheeling and dealing does happen. Let's say I've had this thought go through my head that the Giants, with Joe Shane working with his old friend when he was assistant GM in Buffalo, Brandon Beane, who has the 30th pick, owns the 30th pick right now.
Right.
Is that a place where you do some movement, and Buffalo, which is lacking a third round pick that they had given up for Amari Cooper last year, do they make some kind of deal that way to allow? I mean, I don't know if 30 is going too low to pick up that guy, whoever that quarterback might be. But the key here is, do they have enough of a first round grade on him? And that would also be important.
Right. Do you believe, generally speaking, from talking to people around the NFL, that there will be not only Ward, but that Sanders and Dart will all go in the first? Is that the general consensus from the scuttlebutt?
Yes. Where and is the big question.
Sure.
Now, a popular thought process, theory, whatever you want to call it, conjecture, is Pittsburgh. Okay. How comfortable can they be with their quarterback situation? And the idea that Mason Rudolph is going to get this team into contention just isn't flying with a lot of the so-called experts, pundits. So there they sit at 21, I believe. Is that the place that Shedeur Sanders is taken without any movement? Like, is he actually available that low in the first round? And there's some discussion that he could be, that if he gets past the Giants at 3, then it could be theoretically a free fall to that bottom of the draft, or near the bottom.
Since the combine, Vic, the one name that seems to have risen the most was Tyler Shuck out of Louisville. Yeah. I mean, I remember going into the combine and not hearing much about him at all, and not giving him really much of a second thought. I get out to Indianapolis, and all of a sudden, there's a lot of football people who I really respect said, you better look at this guy's film. If you haven't done it, look at it, because there's a lot to like in his toolbox. And then you even have some of these people in the mock saying he might sneak into the back end of the first round. How much of this thing do you think is just pure smoke? Is it a lot of hype? Do you get the sense from the NFL people you've talked to that there is some real positive movement for Shuck?
I have not heard that. I mean, I'm aware of what you're saying, that, take a look at him, give him a second look, that sort of thought process. But no, I've not heard anything strong enough to make me feel, yep, this is a guy that people will jump on in the say at some point, wherever that is, but say that the enthusiasm for him is such that he's a first round pick. Now, Jackson Dart, a little different, and I know it's a different comparison you're making, because Shuck kind of would come theoretically out of left field to the first round, whereas Dart is seen as if 3 guys go in the first round at quarterback, he would be likely that third one, if not the second one. Who knows? And for him, when you look at his game, there are some of those question marks. The biggest of which is he plays. I know you didn't ask me about him, but I think it's interesting on how quarterbacks are evaluated. What's the common refrain that you've heard about him for months, if weeks certainly, but months? Plays in that scheme, that system that gives him some real opportunity to throw to open receivers, because they do such a good job schematically of getting people open. And I think I think Lane Kiffin and of course Charlie Weiss Jr., the work they do, and then of course that connection that both of them have as very heavily tied NFL people. Charlie Jr. with his dad, and
sure.
I think about the connections throughout the entire league that they both have. Lane Kiffin too. you know how valuable, how critical solid information as trust is. And yes, you can still go wrong even if you trust what you're being told by others with whom you've worked or whatever in the league. You can still be steered wrong. But I know, and you know, that people want to lean on something. Hey, I talked to guys with whom I worked years ago and for a long time, and smart evaluators, they say this is the guy. So does Shuck have that kind of people in his corner? I mean, maybe, but I know Jackson Dart does.
And then there's one other quarterback who kind of gets connected to the Giants, maybe not so much in the first round, but maybe on the second day. And of course, that name in the rumor mill is Jalen Milroe. But I asked Vic about him and said, the one thing that I notice is that there is a wide range of opinions about that Alabama quarterback.
It's wide. It's wide, but the reasons to like him are sound. I mean, not only, the start with that athleticism you talk about, the dynamic difference-making qualities that he brings to the table as a talent, as an athletic talent, but such a smart player, such a real, I mean, this is, the level of intelligence academically, but football intelligence, and it speaks to the person, to the individual, is high. And sure, I could envision Brian Daboll having that real feel for this player, number one, and number two, trust that, adding him to your team or his team could be a good thing. But again, is it more of the developmental sort of thing that he brings to the table, that you don't, back to the idea that this team needs to be good now. I feels that way. Urgency. It doesn't preclude you from bringing in young, they got to be brought in somehow. You're gonna make draft picks, and you hope you're making them for you to develop and not for somebody else. And then with Milroe, in terms of, like you said, where the range of enthusiasm for him, is it out of? I think it's likely out of the first round. But how deep into the draft do you go before you get a shot at a player like that?
Final thought, Vic, and I appreciate your time. I know I've gone a little over what I promised. Let me ask you about Russell Wilson, if I can, because when the Giants were shopping for veteran quarterbacks, and Joe Schoen actually said months ago that he would be doing that, so this should not have come to a surprise to anybody that he wound up signing two veterans with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston to protect himself from having to draft thirsty in the draft. This should not be a surprise. But what I thought maybe was a little bit of a surprise is that even though the Steelers slumped at the end of the season and Russell Wilson is going to be going on 37 years old, outside of visiting the Giants and I believe Cleveland, it didn't seem like there was much of a market for him. Do you get a sense for what the NFL thinks about Russell Wilson and how much gas he has left in his tank and how much he could actually give the Giants a chance to be respectable and competitive again?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of doubts and reservations about just how much he can give at this stage of his career. I think there is more of the veteran management ability, game management ability. I think with Jameis Winston, it's much more of a playmaking ability, but playmaking ability that comes with risk, that comes with the turnover possibility. We know that. I mean, that's just the book. But, risk reward, the rewards can be phenomenal. And this is what's going to be interesting is the balance of how Brian Daboll, wants to run an offense with, to what extent are you because those bigger plays, those longer developing plays, off script, if you will, is Russell the right guy? Because when he's bailing out and doing things on the move, there was a time when he did those things, and you could count on it working more times than not. I don't think, in my understanding, based on what you asked me about, like the opinions of those who scout and coach in this league, you don't see that. You don't see that quality paying off as much. You see the bailout, and then that can lead to probably, not much, and the worst being a turnover. But he's smart enough and careful enough to avoid that. That may be where this team is. If in fact, let's just play this scenario out. You get an Abdul Carter. You've now made your D-line even, which can has Thibodeau and can be strong, but stronger. You want to be a sound team defensively that allows the offense to function. They don't work in a vacuum, right? So if they're complementing each other with the field position game, Russell Wilson could be just right for that. But it would not shock me if things are not proceeding in a way that makes that gives Brian, that gives Joe a sense that, okay, if we don't do something quickly here, this ship is going down. Then Winston's there to come in and play. That's why I don't necessarily see it as a Russell Wilson or bust offense. I'm not sure anyone does. I think Jameis Winston's presence, right, obviously makes it more a two-headed beast. But that old, if you got two quarterbacks, you don't have one. So, you'll have to pick. And let's see how camp plays out. I think you're going to have an interesting training camp too, Paul.
Final thought, Vic. Because of the way the Giants are situated right now, knowing that they've got to do significantly better this year, that was what John Mara said. He already told everybody that in January. But you also know that they do need a young franchise QB. How surprised would you be if they went through this draft? Maybe they keep all their picks, they fortify a bunch of other holes on the roster, and wind up putting off the young quarterback question until next year. Would that blow your mind?
It wouldn't blow my mind. It would make more sense given what they're trying to get done. I think, and I also think this is the draft for it. Hey, if we were talking, and this could all be wrong, but if we were talking about a draft that had just these burgeoning, quarterback stars that you've got to get, and they would be flying off the board 1, 2, 3. We've seen this, right? I mean, we've seen this happen in the NFL. And, with the occasional either edge rusher or offensive tackle somewhere in that upper tier. But this isn't that draft by all accounts. And if it stays to that form, and okay, a quarterback's being taken first, is it because he's the best guy, period? I don't think so. But I think he's, for the purposes of a team that is desperate and has to get somebody, he's right for Cam Ward, right for the Titans. After that, it's, I don't think you need to have a real got-to-have quarterback discussion. And that's my opinion. Maybe they'll prove me wrong, and we'll see Shedeur Sanders gone with the Giants at number 3, or like you suggested, wheel back and get a guy later. If it's not him, is it Jackson Dart, whatever. But I can, if the scenario you painted out where they go through without getting a QB in this draft, I don't think it's mind-blowing. And I think it would, for most people who have seen this draft the way it's conventionally seen, it would make sense.
It's funny, Vic, because it's kind of like Monty Hall, right? Door number 1, door number 2, door number 3. Or do you like the box in the middle of the audience?
They're all like that. On Sunday morning, Dan Leverfeld and I will do our show on SiriusXM NFL Radio, channel 88, on Sunday noon, I should say. So the draft will be over. It's our annual post-draft show. We're on from noon to 4. And in those 4 hours, the beauty, it's our favorite show of the year because it gives us a chance to kind of take it all in. And the very point you're making, and have these discussions, take a team like the Giants and just examine their entire draft. Yes, it's first blush. It's all surface stuff. We know that this early, but it would still be fun to kind of ponder, what they did, what they were thinking.
Vic Carucci, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Where can people down here in New York follow your stuff? I know you're all over SiriusXM NFL Radio with Dan Leverfeld. Why don't you let those folks know where they can catch you?
Sure. So my X account is at VICCARUCCI. And I usually just post my content links there. But SiriusXM NFL Radio, Dan and I have been on the air with them for now I think this will be our 21st season, and at least 20 years together of those 21. And you can also see the work I do in Buffalo, New York, with WGRZ TV, WGRZ.com. I do some writing there, mostly Bills related, but I do try to give my broader NFL perspective there too.
Folks, he is one of the real gurus of the NFL, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate knowing him as many years as I have. Vic, thank you so much for your time, and enjoy the draft.
Feelings mutual, Paul, and thank you. You too.
Vic Carucci from SiriusXM NFL Radio. He has been doing it for decades, and I can't tell you, once again, what a thrill it's been tonight to not only have Jonathan Casillas give us his perspective on the Giants as somebody who played the game and won 2 Super Bowl titles, but also talking to Vic. And I promised you that you would enjoy what he had to say, because he's giving you, the bird's eye view, what the league is thinking. What is the logic? What is the rationale about the Giants' place in this NFL draft? And, I've been telling you for a long time, and Vic just mentioned it himself when I said, would you be surprised if the Giants went into this draft and then came out of it with no quarterbacks at all? And you heard what he said. Makes a lot of sense based on what's in this draft. It could easily happen. So I'm just preparing you folks, as I have for months. When you look at the doors, let's make a deal. Monty Hall. I know for some of you that's probably a very old reference, but the game show was that Monty would be in the crowd and he would grab somebody from the crowd and he would have a mystery box maybe, or a mystery envelope. And he would say, okay, would you like what's in the contents of the box or the mystery envelope? Or would you like door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3? What's it going to be? And that person would have to make a decision. And they were all equal options. You just didn't know what are you going to do? And it's only after you make the selection that you find out if things turned out really well or if things didn't turn out so well. And that's exactly the way it is when it comes to the NFL draft. The Giants have a lot of realistic and logical options here. There's no doubt about that. One of them is not taking a quarterback at all and putting it off until 2026. That is one of the options. It's logical. It's rational. It may not be one that a lot of people like, but it absolutely could happen. And I have been trying to prepare a lot of fans for that for many months. I'm not saying it will happen. And let me make that clear. I didn't say it will happen. I didn't even say it's likely. But it is a legitimate and real possibility. So in any event, that's where we stand right now. So that's the deal in terms of what we learned from both Vic Carucci, the NFL's big picture look at the Giants, as well as Jonathan Casillas looking at the Giants roster. Let me get over to your chats and see if there's anything that you guys would like to talk to me about. If you want to come in on a audio call or a video call, we are closing in on almost 1,000 live views. We're almost at 2 hours. I will go a little bit longer if you guys have some more to discuss. I would be very glad to do that. I will tell you a programming note. The Giants obviously have the 3rd pick in the draft on Thursday. You expect that they'll pick somewhere between, between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. By the time the NFL draft really starts, they don't really set the clock in motion until almost 8:15, because they've got to let the TV networks do their whole wrap and their pregame kind of introduction to the draft. They got to get their commercials in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So The truth of the matter is they're probably not going to start the clock on the first pick with Tennessee until somewhere in the vicinity of 8:10 or 8:15. Okay? And by the time they get done, I don't know, will Tennessee immediately go up there with their pick? Look, even if they want to, here's the problem. The TV people still got to get their commercials in, and they still got to get some of their chatter in, and they got to get their highlight packages in. So chances are that pick isn't going to be announced right away anyway. But let's, for argument's sake, it takes 10 to 15 minutes before they actually get the whole thing taken care of, and they move on, and then they put the Cleveland Browns on the clock. All right? Well, now, what do the Browns do? Do they make an immediate selection? Well, you're going to have to go through more commercials. You're going to have to go through more highlights. You're going to have to go through more scuttlebutt and chatter. Even if the card is being run up to the podium, the NFL is going to hold it for a few minutes until the networks have the ability to do what they need to do to get their programming and their commercials out of the way. That's the way it works with the draft. I don't know how many people truly believe that the card goes up and immediately gets rushed up to the microphone and gets announced. That's not the way it works. It's a made-for-television event. So they work around the television people. So will the Giants pick at, I don't know, 8:40, 8:45, 8:50? Who knows? Joe Shane made it very clear in his media availability recently that he was going to take as much time as he could before making the pick. He was going to go right up into it. So will he take his full allotment of time? Or as soon as the Giants are on the clock, will he fill out the card and tell the guys to run it up to the podium? I honestly don't know the answer to that. I really don't. I expect that he will sit on the clock and he will try to field phone calls. I expect that. Due diligence, I think he'll field phone calls. So I think the Giants would probably be, I don't know, probably closer to picking at around 8:50-ish or so. Well, in any event, so programming note, here's what we're going to do on the Big Blue Breakdown. You guys know during the course of the season on Mondays and Fridays, we give you a 20-minute show. It's a tape show. We don't do anything live on those shows, but we do recaps of the previous day's game. We also do previews of the upcoming weekend's game. So what I'm going to do overnight, after the first round is completed on Thursday, I'm going to try to have something up for you guys first thing on Thursday morning to give you a little bit of perspective as to how I saw the first round and I saw the Giants pick and what it was that they did and how they got to that point. So we'll do that and give you a little something on Friday morning to kind of chew on with your morning breakfast if you like. Then on Friday, as you know, Friday night, I believe it's 7 o'clock, there's going to be the second round and the third round. So what I will try to do once again at the end of both of those rounds, after the night is complete, I will try to give you something as well that you'll be able to chew on first thing on Saturday morning. And that will be the day 2 recap or reaction here on the Big Blue Breakdown. And then after that, well, let's see. There'll be a Saturday, which is rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7. So what we'll try to do there is also give you another little bit potentially. We'll see how it goes. If there's anything that's really worthwhile talking about, maybe we'll give you something either late Saturday night or early Sunday morning, some type of recap and reaction there potentially. But then what we're thinking of right now, okay, is on Monday morning. You'll probably get a quick recap as well. Now, here's something I'm playing with, and I've talked to Patty about it. You know, Patricia Traynor, who's in charge of the New York Giants on SI YouTube page and website. I told Patty, I said, listen, I want to see if I can poll my audience, and I need feedback from you guys because there's not much time to decide to make this happen. But do you guys want to do a live show? Because my plan right now is I think I'm kind of eager to try to do it on Friday morning. Okay, Friday morning, and I need you guys to come at me either with an audio call, a video call, or get me in the chat because I'm asking you this right now. I need to know, and I'm going to type this in. Do you want a live show on Friday morning to react to the first round pick? And I want to know what you guys want to do. All right? I want to know what you guys want to do because as it stands now, here's my thought. My thought is the first round's going to end somewhere around midnight on Thursday night. And I know most of you, even if you stay up till the end of the first round on Thursday, you're going to be shot. I'm going to be shot. There's going to be press conferences, with the coach and the GM and a conference call with the first round pick. And, I'll be doing stuff on Giants.com. So I'm not going to have really a whole lot of opportunity to do anything Thursday night. But what I'm thinking is that you guys would probably love to wake up in the morning and maybe react to the Giants' first round pick. Because what do you get here in New York? I mean, I'm breaking through the third wall here, folks. I'm talking to you as fans, viewers, listeners. I want to know what you want because what I'm thinking of doing is we could do a show here on the Big Blue Breakdown Live Friday morning, maybe as early as 8 o'clock in the morning before some of you might go to work. Or maybe you want to listen to it while you're going to work. You're on the bus, you're on the subway, you're taking a walk to your office, whatever. So I'm thinking Friday morning, do a show at 8 o'clock. Maybe we go for an hour or maybe we go for 90 minutes, and I want to give you guys a chance to talk about the Giants' first round pick. I want to make that listener and viewer centered. Because I'm thinking to myself, here's the thing, right? Most of you folks are probably going to want to go to sleep Thursday night after the first round is over. I mean, that's fair, right? It's going to be midnight, after midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. You're going to get up on Friday morning, and the first thing you're going to want to probably do is interact with other Giants fans, make your voices heard, and express yourself about what you think over what the Giants did in the first round. Now, if you go to the television stations, you can't interact with those guys. You can't make phone calls with those guys. You can't chat with those guys. The radio stations, we know what the two local sports radio stations here in New York, they have their morning shows, and they don't take a lot of phone calls on those morning shows. They'll do a lot of conversation. They'll do a lot of opinion, but they'll give you the news and they're going to just opine and opine and opine. And they're not going to give you guys a whole lot of chances to express yourself and to put your thoughts out there as to what you think of the Giants' first round pick until several hours later. And I believe it probably until 10 o'clock or so, when the two New York sports stations then switch to their mid-morning shows or their midday shows, and then they're more apt to take your phone calls. Well, do you guys really want to wait till 10 o'clock to express yourselves and to talk about, who the Giants picked or what trade they made or who they didn't pick? I suspect you're going to want to do it earlier. Besides, if you start work at 9 o'clock, well, you can put the radio on and you can listen to those shows and you can listen to all those opinions of the people in studio at 10 o'clock, but you're really not going to be able to probably call them or interact with them. So what I'm thinking is we come on at 8 o'clock in the morning and we do an hour, or if you guys are really pounding the internet, maybe we do an hour and a half and we go to like 9:30 and we field as many as your phone calls, as many of your video calls, as many of your chats as possible. And let's just hammer it out and have one big breakfast party and talk about New York Giants football in their first round and how it all shook down. And by the way, we did get over 1,000 live views over the course of the last 5 minutes. And I'm very pleased to see that. Thank you so much to everybody out there who decided to tune into the program tonight. If you are late in joining the program or don't know about this program, we try to do the show every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We usually go for a minimum of 90 minutes. Sometimes it's 2 hours. Sometimes it's 2.5. Sometimes I go 3. Now, I didn't expect to necessarily go over 2 hours tonight. But because your numbers kept going up and you finally got me to 1,000, I figured, okay, we'll stay. We'll stay. Now, we're 2 hours and 10 minutes in. If you guys want to hit me up with some more questions or some comments or make a phone call, audio or video call, I'll take it to the bottom of the hour. We'll go 2.5 hours with this show tonight, if that's what you guys want. If you don't, we'll cut it off in just a couple of more minutes and make it a 2 hour and 15-minute show. And I can live with that too, because believe me, I'm going to be working very hard over the next 4 or 5 days. So I could save my voice and save some of my energy. Although, as most people know, I have plenty of energy. Never gives out. Aiden Fink says, yes, what time would you make the show? I'd like to go live at 8 o'clock on Friday morning. That's the plan right now. Isaac Moore says, sound good to me. So I've got 2 people. I've got over 1,000 people watching this show live right now, and I have only 2 people who have voiced an opinion as to whether or not they want a live show on Friday morning to talk about the first round of the Giants draft. That doesn't sound like a whole lot of people. 2 out of 1,000 who are currently watching this program. Is it not worth the time to do it? The Focus says 8 a.m. It's a thumbs up, so he likes it. Well, can I get a few more people to chime in? People who maybe even don't like it. That's okay. What I'm looking for is some feedback. Eric R. says, sound good to me. All right, that's cool. See, because Patty and I talked about this, and I thought it might be pretty good. K. Saint says Friday morning sounds good to me too. I'm thinking that you guys are going to want to talk about the first round. I know I will, but, I could always wait. Scott Young says, sorry, Paul, but I start work at 6 o'clock. And that's okay too, Scott. You're one of our loyal people who stick with this program week after week. So I appreciate you for coming in. But, yeah, it was an idea I had. It's kind of a nouveau idea because I don't think too many people, Tudo says, Paulie, anytime is good. You're a good man, Tudo. I appreciate that. Aiden says he'll set his alarm. Very nice. No, because I just figure it's a little bit out of the box. It's not normal. Most people don't do these types of shows live and don't ask for interaction live at 8 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast. It's not something that's usually done. Aiden says, Paul, you're not hosting BBK on Friday, or you have double duty? Aiden, I'm not doing Big Blue Kickoff Live during the day the rest of this week. I will be on a special edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live tomorrow night in the New York area on WFAN. John Schmelk, myself, and Tony Pauline are doing a triple threat show, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Wednesday night in New York on WFAN radio and the Odyssey app. That's what I'm doing tomorrow night. Then on Thursday night, John, myself, and Sean O'Hara will be doing something on Giants.com about the Giants' first round pick. We'll be doing a short show then. We will also be doing 2 short shows after they pick in the second round on Giants.com, after they pick in the third round on Giants.com. Then on Saturday, we're going to be on at 11:30 a.m. on Giants.com with another edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live during the draft. And we're going to take that as long as we possibly can. Obviously, the 4th round, hopefully to the Giants' 5th round pick. We will see how long that goes. And then on Sunday morning, how about this? On Sunday morning, I believe we're on from 8 to 10. It'll be John and I once again with a live edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live on WFAN radio in New York, 101.9 FM and 660 AM, as well as the Odyssey app. So that's where you can find me all week, in addition to the stuff that will be here on the Big Blue Breakdown. But most of my live stuff is going to be at night and during the draft with the Giants broadcast team. So that's why I was thinking Friday morning, if we come here and do a live Big Blue Breakdown, I was just thinking you guys might really like to have that as an outlet to voice your opinions and your thoughts on the Giants draft. So we got a few people chiming in, and I appreciate that input. I was kind of hoping we get a little bit more of a direction from you folks because, again, it's something different. It's out of the box. It's not a usual time to do such a program, but I'm willing to do it if you guys want to do it. So you know what? Maybe we'll just put it on at 8 o'clock on Friday morning and see how the response is. And if you guys want to join us, hop along and join the train. We'll take it as far as we can. If we come on with the program at 8 o'clock and, I don't know, after 15, 20 minutes, half hour, we don't get enough of people on the train, well, then maybe we'll just have to pull it into the station and call it a day. But, I think I'd like to give it a try, and I'm hopeful that a lot of you folks will come back on Friday morning at 8 o'clock after the first round. That's, 8 a.m. New York time. And we'll see what we can rock and roll and talk about the Giants' first round, whatever it is that they do, whether they trade up, they trade down, who they take, who they don't take. And, let's give it a shot, and we'll see how that goes. It'll be something very interesting, I think. At the very least, again, it's something different. We're trying something new here, and hope you guys really enjoy it. All right, so my thanks tonight to Jonathan Casillas, 2-time Super Bowl champion, former Giants linebacker, and a member of the Giants broadcast team, one of my partners and one of my teammates, for discussing the weak spots, if you will, or the bruised spots on the Giants roster that he would look to fortify during the course of the Giants draft. That was in the first, about 40 minutes of this show. So if you go to the archive and you want to go take a look or listen to that, that's where it is. We had technical difficulties early when he joined us, but then we brought him back and we got at least a good half hour straight with Jonathan to talk about the Giants' individual units. And then, of course, as I just got done a short time ago, we had a half hour with Vic Carucci from SiriusXM NFL radio. Fantastic job putting into perspective exactly where the Giants fit in this week's NFL draft. All right, folks, that'll do it for tonight. Once again, so glad you could join us on the Big Blue Breakdown Live. I'm Paul Dottino. Enjoy the draft, everybody. Again, you can find me all over the place at Giants.com and WFAN during the rest of the week. But for now, I bid you a good night and enjoy things on Thursday. So long, everybody.